this book. And check out his website. You can go on his website, you can look at his YouTubes. Rabbi David Foreman, I like what he's doing as far as doing work inside the text and showing how texts are connected to each other. I think it's brilliant work. So, again, like I said, just a caveat. Can't touch. Yeah, afterward we'll let you. All right. In the glass case, yeah. It'll be hermetically sealed. Gloves. Yeah, gloves. You have to glove up the hazmat suit. All right. So for those of you who received the Shabbat handout, I have, for those of you that want it, I have extra copies of that later on I will give you today if you want. Also, anything that was a handout in that, I have like 3 or 4 handout things. If you want copies of those, see me afterwards and I will get those to you. Because I listed about 4 or 5, 3 to 4 things at least that were see the handouts, because we talked about birth of Christ at Sukkot. We were just going over the big picture of the festivals. I don't think it's by accident. We're coming up on Passover. I don't think it's by accident that Yeshua's death and resurrection occurred at the time of Passover. I think it's by design. And all 4 Gospels, Synoptics and John, basically say the timing of his death was at the time of Passover. So I want to look at Passover and some elements of it, because I think it's important for us to go back and review these appointed times and the significance of them. First observation, just an observation. Notice the order of things. The last plague is the death of a firstborn. Then you have deliverance. I think that's significant. The last plague is the death of a firstborn, and then the next thing that follows is he delivers them out of Egypt. And if you look at the order that we have in the Gospels, you have the death of a firstborn, Yeshua, and then that brings us deliverance. It's not by accident that he's using the theme of Exodus as the timing and the motifs of Exodus for understanding what he's doing. Then, if you think about it, if you work a little further on in the text, what's the next festival after Pesach? You have the week of unleavened bread, the first week. We count 49 days, and we get to Shavuot, 7 sevens. And Shavuot, in biblical tradition, was the giving of the Torah. So here's the order. We have the sacrifice on our behalf of the firstborn. Then we have deliverance. Then he brings us to Mount Sinai and says, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. This is how I want you to live. This is how the kingdom will be established. I will be king, and here's the rules of the kingdom. But notice the order. He doesn't come to us and say, hey, I want you to start observing some commandments. Or, hey, I want to bring you deliverance. Not until there's the death of the firstborn. Death of the firstborn, then the deliverance, then he brings us to Sinai and says, now that you're a redeemed people, now that you've been brought out, I have some commandments for you. And these are for you. These are to bless you. So this is the order that we have. All right, just thinking about Passover, yeah.
Well, then he took us through the Red Sea.
Immersed us. Right. So you have, in a sense, immersion. You have atonement, deliverance, immersion, and Torah. The picture's there.
Sanctification.
Yeah, sanctification. Salvation, sanctification. All in that order, in the right order. Other comments you might want to make?
It's the same. He's faithful with that. You can look at Adam and Eve, you can look at Noah, Abraham, all of it is the same way. After that belief, redemption, then comes the obedience.
Yeah. He births us in first, then comes the idea of obedience. I want to go back and ask this question that we asked last week. You know, why did God have to, not have to, but why did he use 10 plagues? I mean, why didn't he just say, you know what, one and we're out of here. We're just going to do one. And by the way, we made this point. Just, I want to keep this in mind as we think about Passover. That these, as we read these in the narrative, it looks like they all happen one on top of the other. But when you actually read the narrative, this may have been, these 10 judgments, these 10 plagues, probably took a couple of years. We tend to think, as we're reading it, oh look, here comes the next one, and here's the next one, and here's the next one. And yet, there's actually time periods in between, and there's time to get over the next one. And so, it's not just all happening one on top of the other. We read them one on top of the other, but in real time, they probably took a couple of years. So it wasn't as if this just happened overnight. Yes?
It's like Pharaoh and the people of Egypt have a chance to get over each plague, which allows for the hardening of a heart.
Yes.
Because, see, that was a temporary thing. It's over with. It's behind me now.
Right.
And before it black again.
Right. And I want to also say this. We mentioned this last week. That each of these judgments was a judgment on the gods of Egypt. He's dismantling the gods of Egypt and saying, look, you have been in a multi-god system. And all this time you have been thinking, Israel is thinking, there's these other gods. And when Moshe comes to Pharaoh and says, the Lord God of Israel wants us to leave, he says, I don't know this God of Israel. And God says, oh, that's okay, you'll get used to me. We're going to become very well acquainted.
I'm not sure about being used, but
I'm going to dismantle and demonstrate to you that every one of these so-called gods of Egypt are really nothing. But that's going to take time. And I want to demonstrate, he does this to demonstrate not only to Egypt, but to Israel. Remember what we've said, that even though Israel came out of Egypt, Egypt didn't come out of them. They physically came out. So here's the difficulty with our movement. We have come out in many ways of different things, but those things still reside in us. We still have a lot of residual baggage or junk in the trunk. And it's very difficult for this stuff to actually be ferreted out of us because it became so intrinsic to us. And we still have a Egypt mentality, even though we're free. Comments? Anyone want to make a comment on that? Yeah.
So, actually, I didn't know it took a bunch of years, but I'm wondering why. Why wouldn't God have done one after the other?
Well, that's what I'm saying is I think because he is going to take the time to dismantle each of the different gods.
They wouldn't have done it.
No, because Egypt had a pantheon of gods. They had multiple gods. And so he's
So it wasn't just the plagues that we saw in there, it was other stuff too.
I mean, I think all of them come under the rubric of those 10. All the different gods. There's so many that are connected to those 10. So he's basically saying, you know what, I'm going to dismantle all of them. And it's going to take some time to do that. I just can't go with one. Yes?
It's kind of amazing that Pharaoh didn't kill Moses after the first plague.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Let alone 10. So it's probably good that God hardened his heart.
Right. I want to make, yeah.
and softens apparently.
And softens it too. I want to make this point. Just wait. Two things. I don't know if you noticed it as we read chapter 13. In the Egyptian literature, and the more you understand the Egyptian literature, a little bit more of this kind of comes to the forefront. In Egyptian literature, it says that Pharaoh operates with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. The text flips that and says, no, it's not Pharaoh that acts with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. It's Yahweh who does. He's the one that operates with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. I would also like to make this observation, that in the later prophets, The concept of the hand of God, I don't know if you noticed how many times it said the hand of the Lord, the hand of the Lord. That becomes used in conjunction or in parallelism with, wait for it, the Spirit of the Lord. So that the Spirit of the Lord and hand of the Lord are one and the same. So when we say that it was the hand of the Lord that delivered Israel, we can also say it was the Spirit of the Lord. He's present there by using the term hand. So there's, well, where was the Spirit of the Lord? Where was the Holy Spirit? In the Hebrew Scriptures, they use other terms like the finger of God, the hand of the Lord, or other terminology for the Spirit of God. So the Spirit of God was there doing His work, leading them out and guiding them out. All right, now, when we get to Passover, we have the first, once we have Pesach, we also have 7 days of unleavened bread. Why do we have unleavened bread? I've heard a lot of theories on this one, and I think some of them are really, what does the text say why we have unleavened bread? Yeah.
Because you're going to travel, and if it's leavened, it can spoil very easily. You want to have something that's quickly accessible, you can quick nutrient, you're moving out.
Yeah, the haste. We had to leave in haste. We did not have time to let bread rise.
Yeah.
We had to leave in haste, and so he says, look, every year on the annual cycle, you're going to eat unleavened bread so that you'll be reminded of how it was the first time. That you had to leave in a hurry because time did not belong to you. You had to eat this bread that was flat because you didn't have time to let it rise because time didn't belong to you yet. I had not yet delivered you. So you're going to be reminded that time belongs to me. Time is in my hands. And so I want you to eat this unleavened bread for a week to remind yourselves that you didn't have the time. But let's talk about this. Why does God bring His people out? Why does He deliver them?
They can worship His.
So that they can worship Him. Our freedom is not for the sake of freedom. Our freedom is for the sake of worship. In fact, I've said it this way numerous times. If we just have freedom for the sake of freedom, all we will ever do is ourselves is go back into bondage. Now, we'll call that bondage by clever, very, very clever names. We'll call it, here's one for you, addiction. Here's one for you, prison. That's another form of bondage.
Pretty much.
So we have other titles for bondage now but we don't call it slavery anymore. But you're enslaved if it controls you. And so he says, look, the reason I'm bringing you out is so that you can worship me. We don't fulfill the purpose for which we were created until we worship Him. We were created to worship Him. That's our purpose. He says to his people, you can't worship me the way I want to be worshipped in Egypt. Your time is not your own. I'm going to bring you out and deliver you so that you'll have the ability and the time to worship me like I want to be worshipped. And you can be obedient to me. That's the purpose for our deliverance. It's not so we can just sit back and say, well, I'm free. Freedom for the sake of freedom will only lead us back into bondage. It's freedom for the sake of worship that will lead us to where we're supposed to go. So these are the messages of Exodus. Yes?
And that was a model for when the pilgrims, came over to this country too, because they wanted to be able to worship the way they wanted to.
Absolutely. Freedom of worship.
Yeah. So it's like, and then look what happened now. 30 years.
Yeah. Years later. All right. A couple of other things I want to focus on. The role of parents. The role of parents. One of the things that comes out of this is that we as parents have the responsibility to give our children the meta-narrative of the Exodus. That we tell them about this deliverance. One of the things that Christianity has done, it has reduced Passover. It has taken Passover, and now what you get with Passover is a shot glass and a wafer. No meta-narrative. Nothing about redemption. Nothing about sovereignty of God over time. Nothing about the whole Exodus.
You get a bunny with 2 colored eggs.
Yeah, I mean, you get, but I mean, saying there's now no meta. I was just at it recently at a place, and they have people, and I get what they're doing. I get it. Call it communion, and they have people come down. You grab a wafer, and you grab a little juice, and then you go back to your seat, and you've taken communion with no discussion as to what that means, no meta-narrative behind it. And the reason I say this is because when we get to the prophets, we find of all things that Israel had failed to tell this to their children, and they had forgotten this. How do you forget this? Because you stopped telling it. Yeah.
I read a commentary with this down by too, that the idea of obeying your parents is to establish the covenant and perpetuate it, is to teach them the Torah, and that's the obeying your parents is talking about. So some people are, and that's free, because I have a mother that says you obey me, and sometimes she requests things that are not according to Torah. But what we understand is to establish the covenant in Torah, that you obey because they're in Torah. Is that correct?
I would say that's very accurate. Yeah. All right. Other thought. Exodus 12 says this. Exodus 12 says this, that a mixed multitude came out with Egypt, with Israel out of Egypt. The night of their deliverance was not just about Israel, it was about the other nations as well. Israel as a nation had others come out with them. So that the Exodus from Egypt was not just about those who are Jews or those who are Israel, it was about the nations. If you doubt that, when you go to Leviticus chapter 23, he's very clear in the first 4 verses to say, these are my appointed times. These belong to me. I have seen book titles, and I have seen others say, as we get towards Passover, well, these are the festivals of the Jews. These are the Jewish festivals. And they do that so that then they can put it into the category of, I'm not Jewish, these are Jewish, ergo they have nothing to say to me.
I don't have to remove anything from my life.
I don't have to do anything related to this because I'm not Jewish.
I thought we were grafted into something. I don't know.
Well, that's another. We're adopted in, we're grafted in. I think if we took seriously the metaphors of grafting and the metaphors of adoption, if those metaphors are taken seriously, then we have to see ourselves as part of them, as if we come out with them. We were with them coming out, not just they came out.
We're not Jewish.
Sorry, I won't go
Yeah,
back.
that one man, there will be one man of Torah for you and the sojourner within your gates.
Absolutely.
Said 50 million times.
Absolutely.
One man.
Good.
I forgot.
Okay, all right, we'll come back to that.
Brent?
Yes.
Well, catch me if I'm wrong, but God is the root. Adam and Eve were part, Noah was part of that. Then God chose Israel to be part of the tree, the root. They were obviously a branch, still are a branch on there, the house of Judah and Benjamin. And then we're adopted, we're grafted onto the same root, but God's the trunk,
Absolutely.
the life, and He created all these things. The Jewish people are just part of what God created. So we come into it, we should all be doing what God wanted. Not
Absolutely.
This is Jewish or this is
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what